Can you hear us, Michael?
Oh,
Yeah, I can. Yeah, sorry for not being there. I've had a little bit of a cold going on, so didn't
and
want to.
Monica's on her way.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, good. No worries, Michael.
Yeah.
A couple minutes, you think?
Yeah, she said 2 or 3 minutes.
That's fine.
House done, Johnson? This one tonight?
Yes, it's pending.
If that's the case, you have no, we'll see how tonight goes, but if you have, there's no improvements, did you already set the pins? Mike, I know sometimes he does that.
He did verify with, but I'm pretty sure he said it with the $4 stuff.
We'll ask him, because if that's the case, we'll advertise. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, but obviously, I'm not gonna decide. As long as it all goes, we'll advertise this Friday so that we can go preliminary to final meeting, back-to-back meetings, get you closed out. Just take it over with. If you can, it's not a big deal.
That is the only. Yeah. Just
Pretty much blends into the color.
Yeah, change the here. I think I can see the shadow there. Yeah, it's there. It's just blending in.
So I do see where.
Yeah, I'll get it right.
Did that amendment.
Go out as to this public hearing council. And town council.
We did that.
Final class. You don't have to hit newspaper.
It looked like-
It's surely the change between substantial.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
updated on the
that one, yeah.
GIS.
Maybe it'll serve.
Yes, I was thinking swinger screens, but yes. That one is done.
But it's just.
I think we're done with everything that we've looked at here, so.
Our business licenses, is that final read next Monday? Second
No, it's been through a second read and then we had the business people come and
Yeah,
have pizza and visit, and we'll do a final read at the later. Or possibly even.
So take that however you would like.
I suspect it'll be January though, because we're getting close to legislature time in February, so.
Yeah.
And that meeting falls, I think that's go to Wayne, so I
okay.
suspect it'll be end of January.
It's easier just to say put on your building. Paint on your window. Look at this. Your windows, your windows, you just paint it.
All right, no worries. Okay, call the meeting to order and let's do a pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so first item on the, not on the agenda, but we'd like to make a motion to include Mr. Lutz online virtually. Can we hear a motion to include Mr. Lutz?
I move that we allow Mr. Lutz to attend this meeting virtually.
Second.
So in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, then we have an agenda, which I sent out an email. There's a couple things I'd like to add on to it. First of all, under E, new business, I'd like to go through the elect officers for 2026, if that's okay. And also under old business, continue the PUD discussion. Try to get that going again since it is January already. And last time we talked about it was March. I'm glad we have fun. So if that's okay with you all, can we make a motion to amend the agenda and accept as amended?
I move to amend the agenda as you mentioned.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you.
Sorry.
Then we have the minutes from November 3rd on the notes. Is there anything we need to change on that before they get approved?
I move that we approve the November 3rd, 2025 regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes.
Second that.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay. Any general public comment from our audience here? Anybody online? We'll go to public hearing, item D1, subdivision for application for subdivision of Parr Avenue, second edition, vacation of lot 4, and the creation of lots 10 and 11. Staff, you guys want to introduce that?
Mr. Mayor, not Mr. Mayor, Chairman.
Whoa.
Around the second edition. First Amendment is in front of you guys for consideration today. In general, this is a subdivision of an existing parcel. That parcel being lot 4 of the Parr Avenue second edition, owned by Mr. Goodrich, and he's in attendance today. But Mr. Goodrich came to staff after doing the Parr Avenue second edition and permitted a duplex on lot 4 and spent the summer/fall of 2025 constructing that duplex. It is zoned R2, allowing up to a 4-plex to be constructed. When he constructed it, he constructed an additional water service line and sewer service line out into Parr Avenue so that both units would be served appropriately by water and sewer service as well as power and allowed to be subdivided in the future. This is to break that lot in half. Basically, the lot boundary would be the firewall between the two units of the duplex, allowing the sale of lot 10 and lot 11 separately. From a review of town staff and from the town attorney and survey review, there's really no material issues with this subdivision. As far as code compliance, I see no reason not to recommend approval of the subdivision into lots 10 and 11. It's the most straightforward subdivision. I'm not aware of a single variance or waiver of the town code, so.
Great. Any questions from the board?
Did we receive like any written comments from the public? Nothing. Okay.
Letters went out. I think Mr. Goodrich only had to, across the road is owned by, there's like 10,
Yeah.
all owned by the same person.
Yeah.
That individual, the county, and one
One
other.
south of that stretch of
It was not a huge mailing list that was required by code.
Okay.
It did go out, and we have not received anything, and it was properly published in newspapers.
Notified our other neighbor as well.
No comments, no questions? Unless you have anything to add?
I guess maybe I do have a question. Have we done this sort of thing before where there's a lot line down the middle of a building? And if so, how does, I don't know, necessary repairs to that common wall get handled? Maybe it's not really relevant to our review and approval, but just more out of curiosity.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the way it's designed, the firewall in between the two walls, so there's a true median line. There's basically two walls, then a gap, and two walls in between those. So any repairs that are internal would definitely be on each side of the owner, as well as water sewer goes. Exteriorly, they'll have to set up an HOA in order to do whatever they want as far as communally painting it the same color or that kind of thing. As of now, it'll be, most neighbors don't set up an HOA, they just get a hold of each other, and when it's time to repaint or something, they repaint. If they want to start an HOA for their townhome, they can, at which point they can start putting some money away or something for painting 10, 12 years down the road or whatever, so.
So they don't have to do an HOA? It's not like it's
Don't
required?
have to, no, like you see a bunch over on Cole and stuff, like some of them are painted different colors on, not bar,
Country club.
country club. So you own it individually, it's your house, so you can kind of do what you want. But as far as the structural aspect of it, it's built so that it's basically two homes on that middle wall. So there's a big gap in the middle and then two walls, two walls.
And to answer the last part, or the first part of the question was, have we done this before? It's very common in Pinedale. I have not been part of one, but there's several threeplexes, fourplexes, duplexes, mainly here on the Cole and Ashley portion of town, where they can be sold separately. Other places where they're only serviced by a single water sewer service line, a duplex can exist, they just can't be sold separately. So to be able to sell separately, utilities have to be separated. And then that firewall is a requirement of the International Building Code for a firewall to be established between adjoining multifamily. I think they're considered a single family dwelling, but like a multifamily structure or multi-dwelling structure just requires that firewall. And that's from any vacancy. So that's from like bottom of foundation hole all the way to the peak of the roof is where that firewall extends. So it's not just between living spaces, but all the way to the top of the rafters and the bottom of the foundation. So.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, how does the foundation work in this case? Is it sitting on one wall or is there two foundation walls?
So if you just picture a rectangle with a line down the middle wall is bigger. So you'd have a class for this big. This is the wall, the concrete wall in the middle. And then they have two different floor systems that go in here, so there's just a gap in between. But it sits on, there's one, instead of an 8-inch wall, I think it's a 10 or 12-inch thick wall that goes down that median wall right there.
Okay.
Which I would add though, if we come, talk to the agent about it, but if we do more of these, like one of our goals with these is to get some lower, more affordable houses. They're not super cheap, but they're in the 400s. They're 2,200 square feet, so they're good livable space. But if we do them in the future, we'll be coming and asking for a variance on tapping into that water and sewer. So that was
To share the same water and sewer.
to share the same water sewer line. So that's something we'll ask for in the future on that specific subdivision. That sewer line was 14 feet down and cost us an extra $68,000 to tap that because it just blew up on everything. It was a mess over there. So, yeah.
Is there a way, like, to tap into it? Is there then a way to like meter separately or Is
You
that,
can meter it separately anytime, but the requirement under the code is that you have to separate them and sell them separate. We don't want to do a duplex where one ownership is there and you just have to rent it out. So to get homeownership on each side, we would have to have a variance in order to allow, put like a deed restriction on the piece of ground so that if there was ever an issue with water or sewer, they could come back and, both whoever is on that deed restrictions require 50-50 to help with whatever repairs you've done. But you can still have access, so you can still have their own water line and sewer line, but where it comes in underneath it goes one. So the water and sewer can still come, it would come under and stub up and then under and stub up. So you'd have 2 water lines, 2 meters, 2 septics, but it would all go one line.
Is that 68,000 typical, or was that just a unique kind of situation?
Typically, it'll be water or street cuts, it's about 10 grand to do a street cut for
Okay.
service across town, but they're not 14 feet deep. And that happens to run, that sewer main runs all the way from, well, basically, Tesla's property to the north of town, right? That sewer line comes all the way from the top of Bloomfield, and all that flood irrigation and everything, it's all clean rock along that entire sewer. So every time you open that, it's like an underground river artesian style. You start getting close to the pipe, it does the groundwater. I mean, how big a pump did you guys have going? Probably a 4-inch and barely keeping up.
The comment that I had.
Can't watch.
It ate out the asphalt towards the neighbors, it shut down the street. And I mean, it's way different than the ones we've done in other areas of town. I mean, most of the time, when you're 6-8 feet, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
It got underneath cats.
Wow.
Most sewers are 4 to 7 feet, water lines are consistent around 7 feet, and you still fight groundwater a little bit, and you still fight clean rock when you poke into one, and you're dealing with a lot of groundwater, but you can handle it. But 14 feet, there's no trench box for that. There's no,
Wow.
it was a big hole.
My contractor said he wouldn't do it again. Like there was, I don't know if I can.
Wow. Okay.
So no, it's not.
But it's a good
common
point,
for them
yeah.
to run
Okay.
a service like that.
Yeah.
They're not cheap, but that's excessive.
Well, any other comments on the public hearing? I don't have any personally myself, so I guess we hear a motion to recommend approval for item D1.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval for item D1.
Discussion or a second?
I'll second if nobody
Oh,
will.
I
Prefer
would
not to.
second it.
Okay.
I will
Let her
second
do
that.
it. I prefer not to when it's a recommendation to myself.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Very good. Motion carries. That is the end of our public hearing. Item D. Thank you, Mr. Goodrich.
Mr. Chair, order of business, this will go to council Monday night with a recommendation for final consideration for preliminary plat. And judging by the fact that there's very little variance here, I think it would be wise to advertise final plat this week so that you can go back to back on town council. We just got to verify those monuments are in. That's the only improvement between preliminary and final is that the monuments get set. So if you can verify that, we can get the advertisement out and keep it on schedule.
Okay.
We can always cancel if something comes up with town council, but can't go back and you have to have 50 days, so.
Cool. Very good. Thank you. All right, moving into item E, new business. The thing that we added was to elect officers for 2026. So I don't even know who is who, what's left right now. But would anybody like to be the chairman of the board?
Right now, you are chair, Tessa is
Vice Chair.
and I believe Judy is secretary.
Okay,
Am I still secretary? I haven't been signing anything lately.
I guess I don't know.
Unless we just haven't been signing minutes for a while.
I think we only have the chairman's signature on it.
Yeah, because
If you're really struggling with two signatures.
I signed one set 2 or 3 months ago as vice chair. I'm up for another year as vice chair.
Thank you.
You up for another year as chair?
Do you want to be the chair?
No? No, in fact, as the town council liaison, I really shouldn't.
Okay.
So,
I'd nominate Tessa as chair. She's been with us for a while. I know I'm heading out. I think Ryan, you are too. So, yeah, I'd nominate Tessa for the chairwoman.
are you about done
I mean, could be.
or
How
not?
long have you?
It's been on here since 19. Definitely before.
Not 19.
Definitely
Hasn't been
before
that long.
COVID.
It's been that long. Time flies. I have no sense of time
Oh,
anymore.
You know, Abe?
I'm looking up real quick when everybody's expiration. Because they're 3-year terms, correct?
Yeah, and I think you can only serve 2.
So this year, Mr. Wells, you terminate in June 30th of 26. So that means you likely started in 2020.
2020.
And the other person that expires is Miss Manny. Those are the 2 expiring. Mr. Lutz, you go through June 30th of 27 as long as.
Oh,
as to-
I thought it was done. I thought I was expiring.
Year 27. Ryan. and
Wait,
Tessa.
Either way, it doesn't change my
You're just
nomination.
expiring
So
here first. Maybe on another
It must have been part of a term. I think I must have served then part of a term for someone, because this won't be 3 years for me.
I didn't think so either. Did she
Yeah.
replace
Sandy.
Adam or?
I feel like you replaced somebody.
Sandy,
I don't remember. I have to go back.
Sandy was a long time ago.
You want to be the
Actually,
chairwoman?
No. I need more time, a lot more time in. Yeah. But thank you for
You
asking.
know what?
I don't remember who all was on before. Anyway,
Well,
So how does that work now?
well, if you're to the end,
no big deal.
yeah, because I'm not allowed to serve through the. through
no,
the rest of the
because you
year.
can't be appointed again, so we probably shouldn't have you be chair.
Okay, so then who wants to be
You
chair?
can't be appointed again?
I don't,
It's 2 terms. You have to just serve, I think, isn't that right, Abe? You serve 2 and then you have to take a break and then.
Mayor Murdoch told me you could just do it indefinitely.
I don't
think that's true.
Is one that you can. I
Really?
think there are others that you can. I will go check it right now. In chapter 475. Board, Planning and Zoning Commission, appointments. Term shall be 3 years, except for the initial term, which are a little different. No more than 2 consecutive full terms may be served. So the way I would read that is that you can do 2. They cannot be appointed again for a 2-year period. It calls that out right afterwards. So you can serve 2 full-year terms or 2 full terms. But if you came in mid-appointment, I would assume you could do, say, 2 years and then you can do 3. It says 2 full.
2 full terms,
2
gotcha.
full terms, but once you serve full 2 terms, that you got to take a 2-year hiatus.
I gotcha, okay. So we need a new chair then.
guess that leaves Mr. Lutz.
Unless.
Like I said, as vice chair, I felt like I knocked it out of the park.
I think you're a good choice. I'm gonna second Michael's motion. For Tessa.
Will you accept it?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Or I will serve as vice chair again. But Sorry. This is for chair?
Yes.
That's for chair.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Appointment for Mr. Lutz, second by. Ms. Lewis.
So we
Okay,
need a vice
Now
chair.
we need to vote.
so now we need to vote. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. So now we switch.
Oh, no, not totally. That would be too messy.
Okay, so then we need a vice chair. Mr. Lutz, I nominate you to be the vice chair.
I'd be happy to. Monica, do you want to be vice chair? I mean, you'll be on the board for longer if you kind of want to step your way up. You know, totally your call. Happy to do it, but happy to defer Monica if you'd prefer to.
Yeah, you have yet to serve as vice chair, correct?
I think I was at maybe 2 years ago. So
The opportunity would present itself in the future to me if I didn't accept it now. Is that right?
Every year. take it.
You're gonna do the same.
Opportunity.
Mind being vice chair for another year, for a year? Mike?
yeah, I'm good either way. I just didn't want to cut in front of you if you were hoping for that.
Thank you for that consideration. I don't mind waiting, so.
Okay, I
All
will
right,
second the
yeah.
motion for Michael.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. You're in, Michael.
All right, ready for it.
Good. Okay, and then our secretary. Would you like
Do
to?
you want to be
remain
secretary?
Secretary.
Are there duties? I mean, sure, yeah.
I mean, I'm still gonna read the minutes like I do. That's an obsession, but
Your role is to read the minutes and help us check them.
proofread really is.
I will do my duty as secretary, yes.
I will nominate Monica.
Second. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. That's all the officers, correct?
That's it.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Trucking along. Now we're on to old business F. We have the PUD discussion, but is there anything else from the staff that you guys want to talk about? Town happenings, or do you want to wait for your report? Old business. Give me a minute to catch up.
We had a big year as far as permits go. This year, I think will be a year of getting everything built digitally. That platform is doing pretty well, actually really well. Excited for Blue Blade. Should make application processes a lot better in the future. We're hoping to build some of our longer term projects back into Blue Blade. So anything that's got a bond or some sort of follow up to it, or like a preliminary plat that has an expiration date without final plat being that we're hoping to build a lot of that back into it. Those are the more complicated permits that we haven't got built into Blue Blade yet, but we do have like fences and a lot of the simpler permitting processes that we've kind of beta checked pretty well. I'm pretty confident we can launch those. That's about the only update on that. As far as upcoming projects, the staff does have a bigger commercial building permit that will go to town council on Monday. That is for First Bank remodel over by Ridley's. It's primarily on the inside, but they are adding a drive-through on the eastern side of that. And we've kind of went through some back information on that project and worked with YDOT. YDOT has approved a change in their access off of the highway, eliminating the access that's currently on that eastern parking lot, making a single access point further to the west. And with that, I do think it improves safety a lot on Pine Street in Chaos. We call that Chaos Corner as staff. So that doesn't fix Chaos Corner, but it does make it a little bit better. And so we're reviewing the final pieces. We asked for several changes in the permit. They've made those changes and sent them back. We're still kind of completing that review, but it is a commercial building permit over $500,000. So it goes to council for review and approval on Monday night. Outside of that, we have had a pre-app with Ridley's again. It's our second pre-app with them. They had about a year ago since we've had our last one. And I think they're kind of mobilizing behind fixing the zoning prior to going too much further, because the zoning doesn't make a lot of sense with the highway. So trying to make that fit with what they want to do while still getting all the information that we require for a rezone. So everything from capacity analysis of water and sewer to traffic impacts on the highway, and pulling that kind of stuff together. And they seem motivated to try to get the rezone completed in a reasonable period of time so that they can proceed with other conversations. So outside of that, I'm kind of looking forward to no applications for a couple months. And planning and zoning dictates a lot of our schedule because people come in and obviously they want to get their projects done. So I don't blame them, but I'm excited to not have to answer to that for a couple months until April, and then we'll be, I'm sure, back in the fire. So we do have a few bonds in a few subdivisions that are coming up against deadlines. So I do know that we did meet with the Moyes Family Homes Group and had a pretty good meeting with them and the town attorney about how to proceed forward with completing that subdivision. They are seeking from council a bond extension. They have certain information that we've requested as staff for that to be considered, including timelines, construction commitments from contractors, and commitments on a construction deadline no later than July 1st of this year. We've asked for that as town staff. We feel like that's appropriate. They've got enough extensions in our opinion. So we've had those meetings. So that bond extension, we're waiting for the final submittal, but I expect a bond extension to come on that final plat. Wind River Resorts is coming near its end of its preliminary plat approval. And so we'll be issuing a letter to Mr. Goodrich and his team indicating either A, go through the avenues to seek renewal, or B, do nothing, but the do nothing would be the expiration of the preliminary plat on Wind River Resorts.
Is that in July also?
No, that's February. I was going to say February 20th-ish, but I got to look up the exact date. And that's the same thing with Moyes Family Homes. It's bonded through February 20th right now, ish, end of February. So we're trying to stay on top of those items. We have a few others that have deadlines, but those are the immediate big ones that we just got to tie up and put to bed.
I do have a question about Moyes. I see a lot of houses going up. And I see that one has changed ownership where there's not a city street built yet.
That would be
Order.
good news. So one of the things that was discussed in that meeting was occupancy. So the town staff has made it very clear that pursuant to chapter 400, we cannot take over public improvements, including water, sewer, and streets for any portion of the subdivision that's not complete to town standards. So it's our opinion that town staff cannot turn on the water to a house that does not have a finished road in front of it. We've taken that stance for 2 years in that project. That was part of the meeting discussion as well. They were going to address town council with that question on Monday night's meeting as well, with the bond extension of the question of can we occupy, can we not, how does that proceed? I had that meeting with the town attorney, and then the town attorney agrees, and he thinks it's the only waiver to that could be a waiver from chapter 400, which is allowed by chapter 400. It says the mayor can waive anything. The mayor has not elected to waive it. And it says that the town council can consider it for waiving or not waiving of any portion of chapter 400. So the council could certainly say, we would allow you to, we will turn your water on. But I think the conversation of the bond and that occupancy kind of go hand in hand. And we, as staff, we've drawn that pretty hard line from the get-go. Without a street, you cannot sell a house. You can't not permit it, but we can't.
When you showed us all those examples from the town where we do have dirt roads within the city limits, yeah, that was pretty compelling to me why we should avoid that.
So that is yet to be resolved. But I didn't know one actually changed. I haven't met with them for a couple weeks, to be clear. We met before the holiday season. Kind of been waiting for some deliverables. I don't know when that changed hands. Must have been between then.
Yeah, lot 9, and it looks like it's addressed on the GIS.
So all of those should be addressed out there. When we permit them, we address them. It's gotta be that one. Yeah. Okay.
So I get sold on the December 19th.
Mm-hmm. And yeah,
That will be discussed as well in town council. You proceed.
Parks and Commission application could be ahead of time on the agenda.
Public hearing.
I don't have a public hearing.
I mean, it might be an entertaining one to sit through.
yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that certainly has been discussed with the applicant, with the town attorney, and that has, the town attorney has asked them to do as an applicant.
Yeah,
so the
and
town council can get- so-
anecdotally, it looks to me like someone's parking there, like if someone's maybe moving in. I don't know, but there's a contractor vehicle parked there.
Interesting. Well, thank you for the update. You guys are working hard. We appreciate you, as always.
We took our 2-week hiatus over Christmas where we worked on something physical. It was kind of nice. We went, started a little remodel out at the airport.
You say that as if the project is done, but I was talking earlier.
It is not, it's not done.
I know, but you're like, oh, you're there for 2 weeks.
We took a 2-week hiatus, now we gotta get back to our real jobs and still get that done. But it was good.
So to continue the PUD discussion, does everybody remember where we left off on that?
Yeah, you assigned us all homework
Yeah, homework.
and the deadline was
Terrible.
last April.
Chairman, good thing you're gonna be the chairman. So in summary, the PUD discussion is basically looking at the best avenue to add a planned unit development option into our chapter 475 code. And basically what we had discussed is adding it as a zone category, a new zone category, right? And so if you were to have a project in mind, like Ridley's, that would be multi-use, large area, you could apply to change the zoning of that property to PUD. And with that, you have to have a pretty significant design, right? And that's where all the details where we need to pick up and figure out how much is required in a PUD permit and how much is required or how much can be changed between when the PUD permit is given through to final completion, right? How much is allowed, those kind of things. So we were looking at surrounding communities. We were looking at other code examples. And then we had that Google document. And does anybody else have anything to add to that summary?
With the Google document, we assigned people to different sections, right?
Yep.
And potentially also to reach out to other municipalities, like towns, to get input. And then we're writing the document. Essentially.
Yeah, and so I think it's valuable to try to get this done because I think it would be advantageous to the permitting process for our staff to review. It would be advantageous to the public for them to be able to work in this. It's kind of a modern permit atmosphere, I guess. That makes sense? A little bit more, I don't know, flexible than the current zoning categories that we have. So I still think it's a valuable thing to pursue, and I would like to really pick up some speed and try to get something recommended over to town council as soon as possible.
Yeah,
If we can, even for next meeting.
if we had it in place for Ridley's, wouldn't that be
It
wonderful?
would be very wonderful.
And they would, I'm sure, love us to work out the kinks with them.
I
Yeah.
think the process would be if you guys got a draft, I could take that draft to council between your meetings. So for instance, well, maybe, how would we do that? If you guys got a draft by next meeting, I could take it to the following council meeting in February and say, this is what's come up and they would like to go to public hearing, and we could still hit the advertisement and have it in public hearing for consideration in March, and then it would go to 3 reads in council in March and April. The best timeline that we could probably, if we hit that, would be an April approval of a PUD process.
Does that fit with Ridley's timeline for rezoning?
I don't know. I mean, the last pre-app we had with them, they seemed motivated, but they seemed motivated a year ago, and
Mhm.
I don't know. That was a year ago, so might get done, and if we haven't received an application, then great, like, they could then use it. I think they
Okay.
would love that. Just because I think our zoning, though it makes a lot of sense, I think the challenge of doing a rezone is always the scrutiny that comes with the rezone, because everybody wants to see more of a plan. And a lot of developers are saying, well, we could make a plan, but then we certainly could change it to whatever. Now, once you change zoning, it's changed. But if you have a PUD that has an adopted master plan,
Mhm.
there is a general now outline that the council can consider, but also the public can be part of that discussion earlier, I guess. And when it's adopted and approved, they at least know, generally speaking, what parameters are going to be in that subdivision moving forward. Whereas a rezone, you could do commercial and then it's a gas station, or it's a vet clinic, or it's a restaurant, it's a whatever. They might have an idea today, but not that much of an idea. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. The reason, when you rezone a property, it changes the value of the property.
Mhm.
And there's all these what ifs that always show up. Remember all the what ifs that showed up on Chauncey's thing when we did that last rezone? They're real, concerns from neighbors and everything. And so, but from the developer side, it doesn't necessarily make sense to put a bunch of money in up front to design something when you don't know if it's going to be rezoned so that it's viable anyway,
Mhm.
This is kind of a way to alleviate that problem. So with that said, I don't know where else we were at. We've assigned some of these tasks, the homework. Looking through the document right now, I don't see exactly where our names are written to.
Well, the names are written on each section, like
Yeah,
when you get to the first part of the section. Like if you go to the top.
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
So see where it says purpose. and
So
that
that's
was
you,
mine.
that's yours. to-
Yeah, so these first two were mine, and then Mike did the next one, and the names in parentheses are what was assigned, I think.
Mhm.
And then we were all on the bottom there to contact other places. I think if we're actually going to like talk to people in places, we should probably pick a place so we don't have 4 of us call the same place.
Yeah, I was
I
thinking.
mean, I mostly just looked online.
Yeah, looking online is very effective. It's just, like I said before, we need to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, because certain areas have very different codes than we do. And so it's just really hard to try to pull a piece of what their code is and compare it for our situation when their whole framework is different, So keep that in
How would you
mind.
like to evaluate, like, I feel like our next step maybe is to look at what everybody has added in here, since, we haven't had time to do that. And so how would you like us to do that? And then I also feel like there's that piece where we need to compare it to what our code actually says and make it kind of match what's required for all the other zoning codes and things. which, you know, if you look at that as one big project, that's pretty time consuming.
So,
I mean, the other thing you could do is like have a workshop or something halfway through the month or something, where we could go through and read what's here and have thoughts and then come together for an hour and discuss.
Yeah, I like the workshop approach.
yeah, and on a little bit of a bigger picture, it is going to take a while to get this a final approval,
Mhm.
right? It's a little bit of back and forth to the council and
Yep.
back. And so I would say we should keep it as simple as possible for the first going in, and then we can always add stuff to it. Because.
Well, I think I think what you do is you come up with this thing and you send it to council, and then it's kind of at council for 3 reads. And it's outside of planning and zoning. And so I think we need to have like a finished draft, you know, something we're happy with at this table.
Okay, it
Before
doesn't
we
come
send
back
it.
to us.
Does this, I don't think it
So
does.
it'll go to council after you get a draft. It'll go to the council, but I guarantee what council's gonna say is, thanks for putting the effort, we're willing to send, because by code, it has to be referred to P and Z for public hearing by the town council. We can't just go run our own course and then bombard the council and say, here's our code. We need to come back with something, saying we would like to take this to public hearing for consideration.
Did we do that last early?
We've generally reported to them and they've kind of
Okay.
given us the heads up to move forward. I would still feel most comfortable to conform with the code, that they refer the ordinance to planning and zoning for a public hearing.
Could we, as council,
I think so.
refer it back to
Really have
planning and zoning?
Give them, but because I feel like when we bring it to a public hearing, the public's going to see the words that go with the ordinance, that it's not.
I wasn't thinking of the public hearing. I was thinking of the
A referral.
the referral to actually work on it.
I thought we did that.
I think
We have a referral to work on it. We
Yeah.
already have that.
okay, so I thought that's what you were saying you would want to do
I
again.
would like to have a referral of here's the words, because I feel like the electeds are behind like any policy in the town of Pinedale. So as soon as it hits publishing of like, this is a public hearing, there's some ownership on our elected officials that say, why is the town doing this? So I feel like it's important to give them, here's the general language of what we would like to consider adding to the code.
So we need a draft before we,
I think that
That
would be
point.
the wisest and safest way to.
and then it goes to council and then it comes back here? Or,
Yeah, so
okay.
that would go to council if they would, I don't know if they read it or not, you read everything, so.
I sometimes feel like I'm the only one.
But there's a reading of it, right? They have the opportunity and they say, yeah, we're referring it to public hearing for the public to weigh in on it. I feel like that's important.
Yeah.
Okay. So either way, it sounds like we need to come up with a decent draft right
Mhm.
now. It will have a little back and forth and there will be further time to change it, even
Mhm.
as town council.
Yeah.
But for this draft right now, staff, are you able to see the Google Doc?
I do not have it open at the moment. Maybe share it with me again. We struggle with Google because we don't use Google any longer.
So I sent it in the email this morning at
Oh, okay.
9:45.
But I feel like it's kind of a lot to read through just sitting here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have access to it, right?
Okay, good.
Maybe, just to propose an idea, maybe we could each sort of flag the issues that are controversial within the provisions we've been working on. It seems like some stuff is pretty basic, like every PUD ordinance that I've read says it should conform to that town or city's master plan. So it's sort of a no-brainer to put that in there. I know there were a couple specific things that I ran into that I don't really know what the right choice is, and I could just bring them up and we could all weigh in. And I'm guessing everybody else had those, you know, few items that they thought are potentially controversial or really affect the direction of this thing. Maybe we should start with those type of things. And then we can hash out, you know, every comma a little bit down the road at the next meeting, once we've kind of dialed in the big picture.
In the sections that I did, the expiration date paragraph, that second paragraph is where I just threw some dates in there. So we'll have to look at that a little closer, but I feel like that one's not as big of a deal as some of the other stuff that you guys added.
So Mike, what you're suggesting is we go through on our own time and flag in the document, make comments, highlight, look at that kind of thing?
Well, I'm sure we could get some work done today if there's the appetite. You know, one, just for an example, and I'm not sure exactly whose section this would fall under, it seemed like a lot of the codes out there address phase developments, which I think almost certainly, you know, the majority of these would be phased. Do we want to have a phased development provision in there would be sort of a big picture question. Maybe it's, you know, probably falls within, I don't know. I guess I'm not actually sure where it falls in, but there's a big picture consideration of some codes say that this is its own zoning district, which I think is kind of implicitly the direction we're going based on what's written here. But there's others where it's a conditional use or an overlay, or, you know, it's sort of varying from a base zoning district. That's another big picture consideration. And maybe a third one would be, is it available everywhere? Is it available only in certain existing districts? You know, can you only change residential and commercial, or is it just any district can change to PUD?
I believe we want every district to be able to change to PUD to address commercial developments, residential developments, and the fun ones that mesh several types together.
I would agree with that. And also, I would agree that it's not an overlay, it should be its own zone. And because we don't have any other overlays in our code. Is that correct, staff? We don't have any overlays in the town code.
There's a couple, like a downtown parking district is the only overlay.
Oh.
It gives an exemption for off-street parking requirements. That might be about the only overlay, I mean, generally speaking, overlay that there exists.
Okay. But do you all agree that it should be its own zone, or would you rather?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's how we talked about doing it last year. And I think you made a really good argument for doing it that way, because those are the applications where we're seeing the need, the zone.
Mr. Lutz, you agree on that?
Oh yeah, I do. I think it's just before we got too far down the road, and it sounds like maybe we already did reach a consensus on that, and I just forgotten due to the passage of time. But I was thinking we should figure out the really big picture stuff before getting too far into the details. But, you know, it sounds like Judy flagged one controversial issue is, or just sort of open question is, what time frame do we need for completion? I think that's where maybe the discussion of can you have phase developments come in?
Well, and in that paragraph, there are different timelines for different steps and, but, what do you consider as, like, let me think what the wording is in here. I think it was like substantial completion, but I don't know. I'd have to read back through it again, and I was just throwing numbers out based on what I was seeing, but, is that a practical timeline for our shortened construction season? And, so I think we'll need to look at some of that. I don't know that we need to do that at the beginning. I think we can come back and cover that at the end because we'll have a better idea of all the steps they're going to have to go through. I think one of the biggest things I want to see is that it doesn't, the goal of this is to make it easier for a developer and also allow the town to have a good say and the residents to be able to know what the project is. I just want to make sure that we don't overcomplicate it to the point that it's then taking longer or more costly for a developer, because I think, to Chauncey's point tonight, the changes and the decisions that we make can cost $68,000, which we never had intended for that to be the case. So
I think that the incentive will probably be addressed in my section under the process. And I do think we need to choose parts of the process and make them either faster or easier. Simpler, I guess, less complex or faster timeline wise to incentivize the use.
So the timeline of changing the zone would be the same as what the code already is established.
Yeah.
But then once you have the PUD going through final plat, should be more simple.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Because you already have, because right now, if you zone change and then you try to submit a preliminary plat, that preliminary plat has to have all this design with it, right?
Yes.
That's what you're approving.
And a preliminary plat, there's still zoning there, so it's still just a parcel. So there's still like a use that's undefined, but I think a PUD is similar, right? You're kind of locking in commercial district areas, whatever the case may be, but you're not defining exact lot lines is the major difference, right? Because right now that major design comes in the future, whereas I would imagine a PUD, you could say this is kind of a residential area and you could draw some blocks or lot lines, but you're not locking into the exact lot line. It's not that detailed. So, correct?
Yeah.
Number of units, whatever the case.
So in your mind, Ryan, when you have your PUD approval, do you leave here with a very definite set of where everything is going to be? Or do you leave saying this quadrant can have this?
Yeah, and that is a big question that we need to answer is how much. So obviously they got to come up with some kind of plan and they're going to put it before the public and say, this is what we plan to do. And at some point we have to hold them to that. But there needs to be some kind of flexibility because things change a little bit. And so how much flexibility is enough? And is that mean like they have to define the buildings where they go and their dimensions have to be exact. All of the parking has to be numbered. The grading has to be designed. These things all cost a lot of money, but it needs to be done at some point. Then when you get moving through the project, you may be able to change the square footage by 10%.
I love it.
Or you may be able to move a building in and out, up and down a little bit here and there. I don't know, 10% of the setback, whatever it is, right? Enough to adjust things to make it work, but not to change the picture that was shown to the public when they agreed to the PUD. So
I think that might be where the incentive is and the flexibility as well.
So how do you define that so that it's not cumbersome and?
I mean, here's just an example, maybe something like that, where you have percentages, like you generally have it broke out where roads go, where things go, but percent of multifamily, percent of non-residential, percent public space, open space, you're kind of locking into those percentages, but maybe you have the freedom. There's another example I just looked up that has different phases defined, just kind of the blocks broken out, phase 1, 2, 3, maybe just some examples.
Yeah. So would it be like that, or would it, I mean, would it also show outlines of commercial buildings, parking, you know, the design of where are you gonna have turnarounds? If it's phased out, right, you have to be able to have fire turnarounds within each phase. Those things need to be designed. Because those are the questions that we always get on every zone change is, well, what does Shad Cooper say about turnaround? It's like, well, he doesn't even have a real design in front of him. How can he,
Right.
you know, and,
Well, that and what's gonna be right across from my house, you know, I think, you know, I'm not sure what's going on that red border. You know, that looks like,
It just says commercial 10 acres.
okay, so that's pretty open to whatever. If I had a house across the street, I'd kind of want to know what that's gonna be, rather than just blanket approval. So,
so I guess the meat of what we're discussing right now is just what is going to be required in the plan that's submitted for a PUD zone change. What substantially has to be there, and then how do we how do we allow some level of flexibility from there moving forward? How much?
I really like the things that we asked for in rezone. So we asked for, the only thing we can ask for right now is max development potential on capacity impacts to water and sewer. So they have to take the zoning, they have to do calculations of what's the maximum density that somebody can easily deliver this. And that's a number that's way larger than I've ever seen developed in any community. Like, you don't develop like that across the entire, like Chauncey's is a great example, because you have R4. Now you can put a multi-unit, I mean, you can put a roof dense, and so 1,000 people can live in this one block of Pinedale. It's like, well, 2,000 people live in the entire Pinedale. So what this allows is, the more defined they are in water and sewer, you could say, based on those number of units, dwelling units, commercial, develop a water sewer capacity and impact it on the town's water and sewer models. And that's a very defined thing. But there's also got to be, any amendment has to be approved by planning and zoning and council, because if they come in and say, well, we're going from 35% of this residential up to 45%, that's going to impact the water and sewer development. So it needs to be defined enough that they'd have to come back and during an amendment, they would have to fix those calculations within a water or sewer model. We did it, so water's that way, sewer's that way. Storm, I don't think grading is necessary, because I think grading, I've been the engineer doing grading designs, and when you get to grading, you don't do that until you get to like 50% design or further, because it's very expensive to fix. For, you know, an hour of laying out a napkin sketch of a subdivision, I've been with subdividers that you go through the whole thing and then you get to 99%. They're like, well, I'd like to move this. Well, it changes everything on the grading plan, where every drop of water goes. But what we do care about is how much is impervious and what are you doing with that water? So if there's a certain percentage for each type of development or parking lot or max surfaces that are impermeable, where we say this is how much stormwater you have and where are you going to put it? Are you going to tie to the creek? Are you going to have retention basins that absorb into the ground? What are you going to do? And I think mapping that out matters. Does it have to be in the exact location? Maybe, maybe not, but knowing that they have a plan to deal with that water is important. But I don't think grading is important at that phase. I think it's very expensive and unnecessary. Traffic impact studies, the same thing that goes with water and sewer. If you define how many residential units and you're defining commercial space, it's a lot easier to follow basic calculations inside of a traffic study, that you can say, this is how I'm impacting the highway. And if you need to add a turning lane or something, that can be defined at a PUD level. Like phase 1 and phase 2 is fine, but by phase 3, you got to add this turning lane. Very clearly, easy to define for a developer. So those are my inputs on things that I think we're asking for those during rezone, but we're doing it at max development potential. Whereas if they define it, we ask for the same things, but more finite.
There you go. That's perfect. So if it's water and sewer capacity, they're going to say, no, we need 10,000 gallons. And that's where we could say, well, it's got to be 10,000 gallons plus or minus 10%. Because that would give us some flexibility to change it, whatever.
Mhm.
It could be the same with, stormwater runoff, like you said, not necessarily having the grading plan done, but if you're gonna have 100% impervious surface, then you better have a plan. And that's gonna greatly impact the neighbors, right? But if they come up with a plan, a sketch plan of stormwater runoff, then you could say maybe that's plus or minus 20%.
Or maybe on that one, you just do it for stormwater, it's always best to just do plus 20%. So that way you can tell them, here's your stormwater calculation, design, like, this is required in, well, basically you can only reduce the PUD. I wouldn't make it so like, I would have them be conservative with stormwater design because it's always the forgotten stepchild of every development. And it's impacted communities around the entire state. Laramie's in a lawsuit over it, Cheyenne's in a lawsuit over it, because stormwater is so hard to deal with after the fact. And so that would,
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if Ridley's comes in and their plan says a grocery store that's 20,000 square feet, that's going to require a certain amount of stormwater runoff. Then they end up changing that back within the allowed parameters of 10% to 18,000 square feet. Then that requires less stormwater.
Yep.
So
always good with that. Less on stormwater, that way is fine. So designing a little heavier and reducing back.
Well, do we need to even specify that 10% less? It could be any amount less.
not necessarily. I think it's got to be substantially what they put before the group. That's the whole point.
Right.
If they want to go through and do the zone change and have the flexibility the other way, then they can do that. But, we wouldn't want them to say they're putting in a Ridley's grocery store and then we give them this master plan. They do everything but the grocery store and put in, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
I would be of the opinion that you've got to hold them pretty well to it.
That's the whole point, giving them that freedom is you can do it at a sketch plan level, but you're locked into these number of units,
Yes.
plus or minus a unit.
It seems like we never make it all the way through a project without the developer coming in and asking for multiple adjustments because, we didn't foresee this. Is there a way to, is there a problem with the way our code is that's causing this? Is it just that they didn't think through their project very well? Is it, what can we do to alleviate some of that? Because that also takes time and, potentially drives up the cost of the housing or whatever.
I think that's really hard, because I've worked in other places besides Pinedale, and when I was in the private world, I know Ryan has as well, and I've seen the most finite codes. It's still, you still hit unexpected hurdles. I mean, obviously we want to minimize the unexpected hurdles, but I think those are always going to happen. Like, I didn't realize X or Y.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a real chance they could go through a PUD and then they hit the subdivision process and they're like, man, I really cornered myself and I would like to expand this because I didn't realize that I could go to 6,000 square foot lots instead of 9,000 square foot lots. And that's a lot of density, but what you're going to say is then revise your PUD and go through the rezone process and fix your PUD. That's the only legal way to do it, or stay defined on your PUD. So the person who drafts up their PUD needs to know what they're looking at within the code.
Well, and that's the thing I see this as an opportunity to, get rid of some of that hassle if we can allow some change within it. And like Ryan was saying, because some of these things are like, can we have one more unit? And it doesn't change the footprint of the building. And, like the one down here that's going to be Connex units, that, why not? Other than the parking, of course, so I think whatever we can do to help speed this along for people is in our best interest, as a town overall. Within reason, because it seems like you give an inch, they want to take a mile, but.
So still talking about the requirements that would be allowed, like Abe said, as all the things that we currently require. Did I say that right? all
They really scare people when you say max density, now do a traffic study, it's like, oh, 1,200 new vehicles. They're like, I don't want 1,200 vehicles driving by my house.
But that's the whole point, is that to try not to scare people and to allow for the development, but, so we talked water and sewer, storm impervious areas, traffic impacts, and then I think the square footage and general use of the buildings, because that's a big part of zoning is your use, right? So, so the use being like the general terms that we have in the current zoning categories, there's a lot there if you look through all those uses. But they would have to basically pick their uses that they're going to be using. Right? Or are we allowing more flexibility on that?
Well, what do you mean by the uses? I mean, are you saying like defining what each of your commercial buildings within the plan is gonna be? Or are you saying like this will be a commercial building and we haven't set a thing that that's gonna be at this point?
So I would say it needs to be pretty specific. So if we look at the existing code 475,
I imagine you're looking at like retail versus restaurant versus hotel motel.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
so there's permitted uses, right? So I just threw to R2A permitted uses.
Yeah, but those
Church,
are
sporting
pretty
house.
wide.
Yeah, so they're gonna have to name it.
Mhm.
And, you know, it could be a little bit of a mix, but there's a big difference between the public perceiving that there's gonna be a hospital there or the public perceiving that there's gonna be a church there.
Right, but I mean, you look at that list right there and I see like daycare. Okay, so you designate this is gonna be a daycare. Is that always gonna be a daycare for the rest of time until that gets changed? Because what if the needs of the community change?
I would say on something like daycare, you'd probably do more like either school or office as vague as you can or something. I really think of Chauncey's, because like Chauncey could have done his whole rezone if the way he wanted to do it, if he just had said, oh, an apartment complex is not gonna go across the street from your single family house, right? So he could have defined duplex, duplex, duplex. And it probably would have calmed everybody's fears. Instead, it took, well, we got there eventually, but it took some time.
I mean, like Ken Mill's presentation about the number of people that potentially could be there, remember?
Yeah.
That was a huge number.
Huge number. But I agree, there are some that are hard to define. I think daycare would be one of the harder.
Well, and I'm just looking off the list that, you know, that's already in code and maybe we just need like broad categories that could, you know, like this can be office space versus this is retail space. And what kind of retail probably doesn't really matter.
It could be as vague as saying that this building will be R2A permitted uses. But that's pretty vague. Like I said, there's a
Yeah,
big
that's
difference
pretty
between a
wide.
hospital and a fire station and a church,
Mhm,
as far as what the neighbors are gonna see.
mhm.
Or it could be just that they say this building that we have here is going to be, it could be, it's planned to be a church, but it could be a daycare and a foster care and an orphanage. Yeah, I don't know.
Could we just leave this to the process? I mean, I understand that a big purpose is to have flexibility, and in some scenarios, like if there's a block of commercial and there's a corner of it that's far removed from any residential, you know, maybe just saying any permitted use in commercial is fine there, would be okay, versus something, you know, maybe it is across the street from existing single family homes, and to convince the community that it's appropriate, they might request a higher level of precision about what's going in there. Would that be viable, just to say that the uses have to be specified with sufficient clarity that the town council can find that it's beneficial to approve it?
this. One of the things that I just thought of is that they would have to fairly well narrow down on the use to define the water and sewer capacities required. You know, there's a big difference between hospitals' water usage and the museums' water usage, right?
Mhm.
But, so Michael, what you're suggesting is that we leave it open for them to define when they're in that permit, when they're in the zone change process?
Yeah, I think so. I think we want to include a provision that they have to provide some level of specificity, but because it's going to be so case by case dependent, maybe just the overall guiding criteria, excuse me, are there has to be enough specificity that the town can evaluate whether it's going to overburden existing infrastructure or not, number one, and then enough specificity that they can, the town can be sure it's not going to have an adverse impact on neighboring owners. And sort of leave exactly how much specificity, you know, whether it's this property here, this lot is going to be a daycare and nothing else versus it could be any sort of, you know, permitted commercial use, kind of leave that to the legislative process to figure out.
So devil's advocate question, that's all well and good for when you set up the space, you know, and what you start with, but what would be there to prevent, you know, one of these buildings, you know, 15 years down the road, that's, you know, designated as one of these commercial uses from becoming, you know, something else that would be maybe less desirable there, or like if you want it to be specific, like this is retail space, this is restaurant space. What if a restaurant isn't needed, but more retail space is, you know, and how much flexibility would you have within that? And would that cause confusion for people coming in wanting to start a business that don't know that this area has real specific restrictions on what can be there versus what's on Main Street? I don't know. I'm just trying to think ahead.
So let me clarify my understanding. I think this PUD zoning is a bridge from one zone to another zone, right? We're rezoning, and at the end, we end up with residential, commercial, industrial, whatever,
No.
right?
No, it would remain PUD.
Remains PUD forever.
As an adopted master plan.
Oh, okay.
The map goes with the value of the property.
Okay.
So
And
if
that's-
someone sells it, they're still, like that master plan, it's like, just like the town's master plan.
But that's where I'm concerned that someone's gonna come in and they're gonna buy this restaurant, for instance, thinking that they can then turn it into something else, but they really can't.
Well, that's where also the town does require commercial building permits and grading plans with the building permits, right? And so the utilities and the grading and drainage would have to be addressed.
Mhm.
But it's still, yeah, exactly. We don't want to tell the neighbors and the public that there's going to be a church there, and then all of a sudden he sells it and it's something different.
Right. And, you know, I think about the example with the guy that wanted to build the yurts, you know. Realistically, whoever was the realtor should have known that that was not a permitted use. But they didn't check, and they told him that he could have his business there because it was in commercial zoning. And so then we're stuck with having to, you know, either, you know, mess up this whole guy's finances or give him a variance. And so I'm just trying to think ahead and, you know, how can we prevent that from happening while allowing some flexibility, because you may not always need a certain type of business. Who knows what's going to happen, you know, 50 years down the road, whether something's even going to be applicable anymore.
I think that's a great point. As town grows, inherently,
Mhm.
the uses change. probably more residential becomes commercial, is
Sure.
most often. That's why I thought it was kind of a bridge to getting final zoning sometimes. So like at the end, if you just end up with a commercial strip, then it's just subject to commercial stipulations.
But then in essence, you have approved a bar, for instance, could be right smack in your neighborhood development. So, I just,
So there might.
I think it's complicated.
I guess where I'm kind of coming into is that it would be a building that's shown as a preliminary shape with a square footage, and then it has the uses of commercial or R2, and at a minimum, some of those could be crossed off.
Maybe we could divide that list into certain classes or something, whatever the proper terminology is. In planning and zoning world, where, like things like daycares and churches and things, private schools, those types of things could be in one category. And then things that are much more commercially, like hospitals and fire departments and things, could be a
Yeah.
separate class. And then you could maybe designate, this class, so you have choices, but not unlimited choices.
Would that fall maybe under our conditional use process where those other,
Are you gonna
things.
need a conditional use though if you approve the PUD? Or is that you're already approving it?
I guess we would, like, we might say, these things are allowed. And then our second list, our class 2, those are conditional uses.
Or limited,
You can have a bar if you come back for conditional use.
Okay.
and then a list of prohibited uses as well.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I just picked that because like, to me, it's like, if I think I'm buying a house that's across the street from a church, that's a much different feel than a house that's across the street from a bar.
I know, you'd much rather be
And-
across from a bar.
Totally. Never go there. But I mean, I'm just trying to think of the
It's
extreme.
extremely different character.
Because this is where we
parking.
run into problems where, with it being undefined, is, well, somebody could come in and do this in my neighborhood, and that's what gets people upset all the time.
Yeah.
So I think if we could have it, a little more narrowed down, and they could choose, when they do their PUD, they could choose, like this little blob of land is gonna be for, these type of businesses, and this blob is for these type of businesses. And, there's still flexibility within that, but not wide open.
Yeah, I think they could write that in the narrative, potentially.
It feels like we could just group similar business types, or shouldn't say business, I should say commercial zoning types together, just broadly.
Well-
It doesn't have to be completely defined, I don't think.
I guess for clarification is the idea that we would do it as in it would be written into the code provision we're drafting. Because I definitely see your critique. I think it's valid that someone might buy unaware that there's this limitation. But I think that's going to exist regardless of the level of generality. If we have a cluster of specific commercial uses that's not inclusive of all commercial uses, someone could still buy saying, oh, I thought, this building would be a great place for a bar, and it turns out it's not allowed. It's a trade-off fundamentally between wanting some certainty as a way partially that neighbors can get on board with the development versus wanting flexibility, which, as you point out, might be economically necessary. And I guess what it comes down to for me is I feel like that balance can probably best be struck by the town council reviewing that specific application. And, code could be used to encourage them to take those different factors into consideration. But I think it's just a little too tough to strike the right balance for every lot of every potential development in advance. And I think unless we leave it wide open, sort of, hey, all commercial uses are permitted, then we're still going to run into that problem of if someone doesn't check the zoning before buying, they might not realize the limitations of what they bought.
And the reality of a PUD on like a commercial district that's not in the downtown parking corridor is they have to design that parking lot to fit those uses. And if someone comes in and buys a office and converts it into a restaurant, how are they going to add parking in what's already a fully developed area?
Do they have,
They don't have their own individual parcel necessarily.
so when they come in to make those changes to an existing building, do they have requirements that they have to come to town for?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you change a type of use commercially, we require a building permit every time, as long as we can communicate with people, because the state fire marshal has different occupancy allowances and safety requirements. It's actually the jurisdiction of the state.
Okay.
And so especially when you go to like a restaurant, but even if you go to take an office and turn it into, I'm going to use a vet clinic as an example because we're just dealing with the vet clinic, but different water backflow devices, different fire occupancy, or if you want to take a office building like this and turn it into a town hall, you go into public assembly because we have public meetings here, different fire occupancy, different fire code requirements, state marshal jurisdictions overall.
So do you feel like that would be enough to address the concerns that I've mentioned? Or, because in my mind, and I wasn't saying like we should, have a list of specific, businesses that are okay and ones that aren't. I'm thinking more of like heavier flow of traffic, almost like the difference between commercial and light industrial, but on a smaller scale within everything that's,
I would like to say yes, but it's amazing how often someone buys a building and spends $500,000 and they come in here, they start running their thing and we talk like, hold on, like, it happened with TalkTalk. I don't know how we fix that communication issue. I think it's going to happen now. I think it's going to happen later. I think it's always going to happen. And I don't know how to fix it.
well, and I don't know that it's our job to fix everything. And it's, it's certainly, it's impossible to, people do things without really looking into that. And that's their own responsibility.
Licensing will help with that.
Yeah.
Because I hope someone who wants to run a business in Pinedale, like, oh, I need a business license. I was going to buy this building to run a yoga shop out of, whatever.
Hopefully they do that before they buy the building that they can't do it out of, right? But that's not what happened with the yurts, and I'm trying to think, if we're gonna write this, let's do it in a way that is, least likely to cause people problems down the road. But yeah, I see what you're saying there, Michael. I don't want to open it up to just be anything, because I feel like the code is what saves us sometimes when we really want to say no to something and it's like, sorry, it's not allowed, So, that's things that could be especially bothersome to neighbors, like what would you classify that as, like a doggy daycare or whatever, that could potentially be very, very loud, somewhere that processes meat or something could potentially have smells or something, I just want to think about the things that are going to have more impact on neighbors and maybe put those in a class.
Class A undesirables.
Yeah. But with the idea being, this should be located a little farther from the housing, like within your PUD, you can still have all these different things. And one thing I saw repeatedly within them that I really want to make sure we do is requiring open space and public spaces. I think that's really important.
I think that's been requested from the Park and Tree Board as well, which
Yeah.
you heard, because they keep that town.
Yeah. But I feel like that's one of the benefits of Pinedale. We have all this walkable space, these lovely trails and open areas and everything, and I want to maintain that. But I also don't want the open space to be designated because that's the least desirable to be in. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too specific when it comes to this, and that's stuff that can be addressed when the plan is brought up, but I'm just trying to think of all what could go wrong.
Yeah, open space is definitely on the list here, and I think it's definitely something that needs to be specified in the design.
And I want it not just to be that there's open space, but that it is in some way usable to the public, you know, not just, oh, we dumped snow here, so there's your open space. You know, I want it to be like a maintained area or something that, you know, which I think a lot of developers that are going to go through this would probably want to do anyway, but let's just make sure that we don't miss having it on there.
So like a real design to the open space.
Yeah, a usable open
Yeah.
space, public usable, not just for the people in that development.
So I guess back to the uses, trying to wrap my head around it still, but if, so seems like the consensus is that we don't want to limit it to one use for the PUD that may need to be changed immediately after it's done. So is it the correct thing to do to limit each proposed structure to a category of uses like commercial C1? And in that, some of those uses could be withheld.
Yeah, I think we should look at maybe I'll.
So like,
Point of looking at those.
Ridley's shows their master plan to us, and it's application for a PUD, and they have their grocery store in the middle, and they have all the housing on the outside. Then they say the grocery store use is C1, right? And in that C1, we are going to limit it to not being a fix-it shop. Not
Like an
going to be
automotive repair.
automotive repair. It's not going to be, you know, I don't know. There's how many uses? There's 88 uses under C1.
Well, and see, that's what I was saying. Can we break those into categories that, you know, like the heavier traffic, heavier, louder noises, more prone to having smells? Those could be like a subclass of the commercial that has a little more limitation on it.
You could like retail and consumer services, food and beverage, office and professional services. Sure, like groupings
like that.
under C1.
And you could give examples, you know, and I don't think we have to define every possible use because you'll never get them all. But I think, you know, you come and make your argument for why you think you fit into this category would be a reasonable.
The only problem with that is that then we have to list that. We have to create those new categories and list them in with this zone rather than just using what's already written there and having those stricken off.
I just feel like those are gonna be the sticking points for neighbors though, because if it's open to anything, that's no different than what we have right now.
Exactly. And this is where we can't put conditions on a rezone, but we can put conditions on the PUD plan.
Mhm.
And so that's that I see as the major advantage. But so if we do it, what you're describing is create a new list and that list can be defined and then it can be labeled on their plan.
Potentially, I mean, because it's not a straightforward commercial zone, it's mixed use. And so I think it makes sense to define, you know, what that means. And I'm not saying that you can't have any of those uses within your PUD, but just that there would be different categories of use and that you would define those on your PUD plan. So like you can have like 5 buildings over here, say Ridley's is here, you've got, they want to do a strip mall over here. And so you would have your list of things that could go in the strip mall. And then you could have this other section over here, which could include their their gas station and, you know, a place to go get your oil changed and that type of stuff could be with that. I just want it to make sense to where you're putting things and not just random.
Can we, rather than restructuring the lists or whatever, can we just ask them? The applicant must explicitly define permitted, limited, and prohibited uses in the narrative and site plan. And say those definitions become the controlling land use rules once approved. Like it's like
Yeah.
on them, however they want to list it, and then we, you know, approve or.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And then in further, if it's a general commercial list of uses that they have, then they could come before the town council and ask for a conditional use for the other listed commercial uses.
Okay.
So what you're saying is that we would say all of C1 is permissible, but these particular things need extra permission.
No, I think what she said was, they have to define the list that they think are gonna be used.
But
And
what
anything
developer
beyond
is gonna
that.
limit themselves?
Well, that's
Yeah.
where the burden is on them, right? Like I mean, I think specificity is to their benefit in terms of approval, because we can come back and be like, that's not
Yeah,
specific enough.
that's gonna be the contention, right? Like,
Yeah. Because that's the back and forth, right? Where we get to sort of have that layer on the review. I'm sure it's a balance, right? In their world of how specific and, there's probably an art to it, but.
yeah, they don't want to limit themselves, but they are gonna want to have to explain to the people.
To the public, yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
where the rubber meets the road.
Okay.
Uses.
Yeah, I think that's essentially what I was proposing by saying leave it to the legislative process, just because, I mean, I think it's definitely something we want to define, and it does bother me a little bit if we don't spell it out in advance, but it seems like in this particular zoning, the whole idea is to have a great level of flexibility. And it's going to depend so much on the location of each individual lot, even within the development. You know, some of them, if it's a lot surrounded by other commercial type stuff, it's buffered from the residential. Maybe you don't need as much specificity for that lot, but the one right across from existing residential, to satisfy those neighbors and to convince the town council at that time that it's worth going forward with the plan, maybe you do need a fairly high level of specificity. You know, it's not going to be the filling station or the vet clinic or the meat processing plant. I don't know. It's really tough because we're balancing competing considerations that are totally valid. You know, the desire for flexibility, the desire for certainty. But I think maybe just leaving it to the process is the way to go. And town council can work it out in the back and forth with the developer as it's appropriate for each case.
Abe, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, and maybe the being more specific would actually trigger more need for adjustments and, you know, what's the word? When they come in and ask for something different.
Variance?
Yes. So maybe that's, you know, not accomplishing what I'm hoping to. I'm just thinking like, if we had a list of like buffer zone businesses that could be like, that could be up against, because I mean, obviously, zones transition from commercial to residential everywhere. It's just, you know, those buffer zones that would be nice to have quieter, less um, troublesome, I guess, or potentially bothersome to people. It would be nice to have, so that there's some assurance for, I'm thinking of like the, Chauncey's project down here, that, the residents were rightly concerned about what's going to be across the street from their houses. And if you had like a buffer zone approved business list, that could be like retail, that type of thing, that wouldn't be, too troublesome, but maybe I'm being too specific, because I'm also thinking, okay, my son lived in an apartment complex and there was a Maverick right next door. That was actually really convenient, and so maybe it's not undesirable to have that there.
I think we do ask them to list those out, and the list could be pretty extensive of what those buffer, but not this, like it will not be a dog boarding facility, or it will not be, and that would help with the public's,
Yeah.
comfort and understanding of it. I feel like that's on the planning professionals, that master planners like to, urban design, lay these things out appropriately, but it will be on us as well to kind of think about that critically.
Yeah, and I think they do a great job of within their development. I'm just concerned about like where it borders up against something else.
Integrates, absolutely.
Yeah, so maybe something in there that, at least encourages them to consider what, maybe that's not necessary, because that comes up when you have your public hearings and stuff too. So I don't know, maybe I'm in the weeds here.
They may be used to dealing with that, when they have to submit the PUD, I think I did see some language in one of the things I was cribbing to, like, depending on what zones are bordering the proposed PUD, that kind of affects what.
See, that's
some
what I'm
density.
looking for.
I have like a draft of that like inserted already, but I don't know if we want to go there.
I like that though, because then you are sure that you're not gonna have your very quiet neighborhood suddenly inundated with something that you never thought would be next door. Especially when you're changing a zone from, something that was something they'd be okay with, and now you're bringing in some new development. I want to be considerate of.
I see.
Well, the setbacks will be a part of the requirements, I think.
Yeah, but setbacks, are you thinking like setbacks that don't allow a certain type of business within so far at the edge?
So if Ridley's says they want to put their grocery store here and it's going to be 20,000 square feet, they'll have to define how far it is away from the nearest adjacent buildings, either existing or planned.
Right.
And they're going to have to stick to that dimension plus or minus 10% or something. And if they want to, go with a more unattractive use, but provide a significant amount of open space around it, and that's part of the discussion that we have in that public hearing, then so be it.
It could be potentially useful.
Or if you wanted to be specific about it in the language, and it might not serve our size town appropriately. Like one example is when more than 25% of the lot perimeter is abutting properties R1 or R2, the maximum density shall not exceed X number of residential units to the acre. But if less than 25% of the abutting properties is R1 or R2, then you can have like a different density thing you require. But that's for me, that's me getting into the weeds where all of a sudden I want to take a look at our current density, and it might require more of a study to see, okay, what exactly what density do we have, unless you guys have that on hand?
No, the challenge is town of Pinedale is zoned literally 50x dense. I don't say 50x, but scales denser than it's actually built out at. I mean, the east side of town is almost all R2 or R2A, and 90% of it is single family home.
Okay.
On fairly good sized lots. And so when you look at actual density compared to zone density, there is a vast difference. And I don't have any study that's like actual density of these areas in Pinedale.
So someone who owns one of those properties right now, and R2A, remind me, that allows for some, how many? Duplex. So they could potentially like tear down their house and build duplex or add on a second part, and that would be,
Or do an ADU, accessory dwelling unit.
yeah,
Yeah, to a.
Yeah.
Two individual homes, if you would.
which on the bigger lots, I don't think there's any problem with that.
But even on a smaller lot, you could do it.
Yeah.
How many of those actually exist? Not that many. There's a lot of pressure from the state, I think, to make ADUs, I mean, kind of do away with R1 zoning on a statewide level. There's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
to basically make ADUs like a guarantee on anybody's parcel. So.
Yeah, I can see the argument for it, but I can also see the problems.
Yeah.
What, on the commercial building permit right now, is there any landscape design requirements?
Very vague, more on the parking lot development, and is very hard to enforce. So it indicates that parking lot should be in the rear of a building, which is almost impossible in Pinedale, like nearly impossible to put because then you just don't have access from the street, right? Like unless you're doing a very large parcel. And then screening of parking lots is required, but it doesn't define what screening means. Like it's supposed to be screened by the vegetation or by landscaping, but that's very hard to define as well. Is a green space screening, or is that trees, or is that willows, or is that a fence, or what is that? I have a very hard time enforcing that on anybody because I don't know what that necessarily means, right?
Maybe that's something that needs to be adjusted while we're looking at.
Open space requirements for commercial?
Not on commercial.
Well, we could.
Okay.
I see an example of it here, 15% of the total land
Our
area.
residentials all have open space requirements. Commercial is literally designed in Pinedale to fill up an entire lot. That's
Yeah.
how it's set.
Well, and I don't know that we would want to require that because if you think about the people, you know, the businesses that are on Pine Street, where are they gonna put open space?
Well, they would be
No.
grandfathered.
I know they would,
for-
but if you wanted to have like a nice dense downtown district or something, you
Mhm.
wouldn't want to require open space.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know, because right now you can put a building right next to a building with no space between it in commercial, so. Which, you know, if you think about most, you know, well, particularly like older downtowns, they're all, you know, just built one right after the other without spaces for robbers to hide in the dark and, you know,
Mhm.
all of that. And there's probably been a reason for that, but,
Yeah.
you know, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense what you're saying.
I think though, the open space requirement for a development like this is important because it helps with like thinking about parks and thinking about, you know, greenways and walkways and things that make it feel more like somewhere you'd want to live rather than just cramming everything you can get into this tiny little lot.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it is important.
Spaces to gather where you're not necessarily
Right.
at one of the businesses or,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we kind of worn that out a little bit on the requirements. One of the things we haven't talked about yet is the size requirements. Limits for an application, minimum size, maximum size.
Say that again.
The size requirements, should there be a minimum size to a PUD application? Should there be a maximum size?
I think the whole purpose of a PUD is mixed use, right? So I don't think having a minimum size requirement is logical. I don't know if a maximum size really makes sense because someone could say, I'm gonna take 100 acres on the edge of Pinedale and I'm gonna develop a PUD annexation plan, so like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I don't think someone should come in with a half acre, because I don't think that's really the purpose of it, right? You need to meet up with your neighbors, your zoning is very defined at that point.
Mhm.
So,
So what is that number?
we do have other requirements in our code for size of annexation and amendments. I think they're kind of on the large side, but I think most of them range from 5 to 10 acres. It is in 475, probably about 300. It's in amendments.
Get that thing memorized yet?
No, but general location, yeah.
So just for comparison, I know Cody has a 1 acre minimum and Cheyenne it's 2 acres, but they allow half an acre if you're redeveloping. And then both of those are subject to a waiver. They're not an absolute requirement. Or I guess not even a waiver. They're discretionary, so they're more a guideline than an actual requirement.
And ours is the same for minimum size for annexed land. It also has like, to your point, it's not a hard and fast rule, it's a guideline. And they range from 5 to 20. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 to 20 acres, depending on which one.
So do we want to adopt that 2 to 20 acres suggestion into the,
How many acres is the park on, Jackson, South Jackson?
I believe that's a
'Cause
5.
it feels like, that's a reasonable size to say, okay, you might want to split your development, but anything smaller than that, it's hard to imagine how you could make real good use of the PUD.
It's exempt. I can't see how big it is.
4.5 acres for the old KOA.
So maybe 4 acres would be a reasonable, I just can't see 2 acres is not enough
Let's
to
look at another.
require.
So the Sublette County parcel where the ice rink, I think that's the ice rink. So like the ice rink lot, which is the ice rink and parking lot for another size comparison is about 1.5 acres.
And see, how many things are you gonna be able to fit on there that you would need a PUD for?
So Chauncey's are right under the 5 acre, 4.9, 4.5, 6.
So maybe that is a useful thing then.
I could see even like a more urban PUD example too, like think about something. The town owns that thing right there, next to the,
North Lincoln.
where you put all
The north end of
the
South
Forest
Lincoln.
Service.
Lincoln lot.
Like if that was to turn into an urban thing and there was mixed shops and some other things, it's not like that. That's a 1 acre property, but it could definitely benefit from some planning and coordinating so that it all fits together, right?
That's true. Okay.
The Cooley lot, that's a good one.
It says 1 acre, 0.97,
I don't see how that could be. I guess it's skinny, but
very big.
it looks bigger than an acre, but. Yeah.
So discretionary, but you want to say 1 to 20 or?
I don't know if I put a top end on it, because I mean, the Ridley's is 55 acres.
Is it something though that you could just say when people are, coming in to apply for something that, your little half acre here doesn't really meet what we're
We
looking?
have those conversations all the time. When someone wants to come in and like, well, I want to do an Airbnb, you're not zoned commercial. Yeah, but the other side of the alley is, can I just do a rezone? No. You can convince all your neighbors to maybe rezone an entire block, but for you to do a single parcel is specifically not allowed in town code.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could always ask, but you might spend a lot of money for.
So you do think you're gonna need a bottom limit to prevent some of that?
I think it is logical to have something, someone comes in with a, I don't know, what's a good example, 210 West Pine, it's probably way too small, to probably try to do anything.
Yeah, how big is that? That can't be over an acre.
This.
Yeah.
A third of an acre.
See,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah,
I mean, but I can see the argument for wanting to do it there. So, because that right downtown would make sense, you
There's
know.
other avenues, though. You can come in for a CUP for mixed use residential commercial, and you can define through commercial uses with apartments about it. And
Yeah.
That's a process.
Yeah.
It's already allowed in code.
yeah,
Would the process that already exists address what Ryan was mentioning with that Lincoln lot?
Probably mixed use residential, commercial, or special development plan on commercial parcel.
How big would you think it makes sense to have before before a PUD would make sense?
I would say a couple acres. Outside of that, you're building a commercial application or a couple, some special development plan. Like if someone comes in on the Lincoln lot, say we sold it, say the town doesn't own that lot, that's an acre downtown, say someone wants to put 4 commercial businesses there. I feel like a special development plan is pretty easy to handle that because you're gonna take care of parking, you're gonna take care of all that stuff within that water, sewers, there's no streets involved. I would say anything that a street might be involved. It would be more like access, if there's some sort of access required that takes physical planning and public access to private property, I think that needs to be.
Is there a way to say that instead of having a size limit? I know it's late. But maybe that's something to think about is, whether we want to,
I think
Look at it that way, or-
just came in and, they didn't want to use the whole parcel. They wanted to subdivide the parcel, but they wanted to subdivide the back half of the parcel off.
which one was this?
The back one.
Oh, and so then that back parcel wouldn't have any access?
It didn't have public access, it didn't meet the code requirements for subdivision. However, if they were to have come in, we told them you could certainly go into a special development plan that allowed like a joint parking lot and condominiumize that, or do some sort of shared parking lot and that would make more sense for a PUD where you have a shared parking lot and 3 or 4 businesses that have access on the back shared parking lot.
It's almost like they need a street across the back there.
There's a long way, they're kind of parcels a long ways from nowhere for current public street.
Right.
And so for them, it didn't justify building a public road for a 1 acre parcel in the back. But a shared parking lot with multiple businesses would allow them to leverage.
yeah, and that's exactly what PUD is.
How big
So
is that lot?
that's 2.5 acres.
Okay.
So maybe the 2 acre limit. Reasonable enough. Okay. What else haven't we talked about?
Character of building type. Guessing we don't want to go there. We don't have that.
I mean, technically, you could just make it be
My friend's
consistent with
sharp
the
enough to go.
development.
I think that's something that might be more appropriate in like the town master plan. Master plan section in the town. Certain overlay or color palette or something like that. I think that has been tried in the past with the town and people kind of freak out at first, but I can't tell you what to make my business look like, right? However, there are certain areas of town that defining the character would make sense. I know the mayor and I have spoken about this in the past. It's a fine line to walk, but maybe a master plan. That would be something, if they wanted to commit to a master plan within their PUD, well, that's what a PUD is, right? If they wanted to define what that character is going to be like, that's the appropriate place for them to do that. They could define that in their PUD. And that would be on them as an individual. They're locking themselves into that, I do think there's a reasonable, like downtown corridor argument that can be made by a town of Pinedale master plan of like preserving the historic downtown center.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know if
you
that's
could do
appropriate.
that very vague too, by just saying that it should, you know, somewhat match the surroundings or, you know, like, I think about the downtown corridor, I would never want to pick a color palette because those change so frequently. And I really bristle against somebody telling me what colors I have the option to paint. But within the PUD, I think if they want to do that, that's on them. It's no different than an HOA that has its set limits.
Earth tone or whatever you want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
right now someone wants to come in and I always like it when people tell, I don't want my neighbor to paint their house pink. I don't care.
well, and that's like my sister, they live in Windsor, Colorado, and they're in a, you know, a neighborhood. They only have certain choices and they can't pick blue if their neighbor's blue. And I mean, and then you only have these certain trim options and I mean, that's just too much.
That's too much.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
I agree.
No, but they could enforce it themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, they can totally do what they want in their area.
But I think that's kind of needs to be in the HOA category and not the PUD. So if they want to have an HOA and run that and enforce it through their HOA, they can do their architectural requirements there.
Yeah.
And I also don't think that it necessarily needs to match what's next to them either, because, you know, like as we're seeing more, like the more modern buildings, like, you know, the ones that have the single roof and then the whole plate glass, love those. Those weren't a thing back, you know, 50 years ago. So you're not gonna match, but you could have potentially a really cute development if you had, that was your style or whatever. I think we have to allow for growth in the future of who knows what's gonna be popular then.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair, you know.
I mean, they're not gonna do something that's completely hideous or nobody's gonna buy it, you know?
Right, I think, right.
Well,
You'd be surprised.
that's true. There are some
I just don't want to be the one that's answering the phone and says, no, man, I gotta complain, you cannot paint your house yellow. And like, what do you mean? It's my private property. Like, those are the
Right.
calls we'll take. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. No part of that.
That's it. I'm moving to Barger.
I don't want no part of that.
Okay.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, any other last minute comments before we wrap it up?
One of the things that I think is light in our code, and it's becoming very popular in other places, is lighting. But I think that's hard to address in PUD, be more appropriate to address in our commercial zone district and residential. Because lighting is one of the few things that maybe you don't like looking at your neighbor's yellow house, but when your neighbor's light is blaring across property lines in your parcel, that is a nuisance that is very hard to.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
So,
like lit up signs
Mhm.
as well.
yeah,
Which should be covered in the sign ordinance, I would think.
some of that is, some of it's, I hate the sign ordinance. I know we already fixed it once, but until you try to enforce it and do it, it is very, I think something's a great idea, and it is better than it used to be. But there's a few areas you're like, oh, yeah, I hate signs.
How does that work if you were to make a requirement in residential for like a fully shielded, et cetera,
Do you want to go
like compliant, like
Teton County level, or do you want to go like more reasonable?
you went more reasonable? Would houses that are already, would they have to change their fixture out? Or would that get grandfathered in?
If it's in zoning, anything that pre-exists prior to, that's a state statute. So
Yeah.
pre-existing condition, you cannot go back and require someone to
Okay.
fix something. It was in full conformance when it happened.
Well, then that's not a big deal. Just probably write that in and.
Well, and I think as far as lighting and stuff, you know, you know, the kind that are downward and not visible from space or whatever.
Yeah.
It makes sense, but also, you know, pathways should be lit, you know?
Yeah.
I think the most obvious way to do it is
For
dark
egress, I
sky, fully,
Shielded.
and a certain number of lumens don't carry over past the issue power line, because.
Yeah.
And that sounds really like, or candles, don't, I think that the actual measurement is candles. Does not bleed past the edge of your property line or a certain number. And I think that sounds really hard to a liaison person, but to people who do that for a living, they put a light fixture in it. There's literally a candle, like if you put it 10 feet, here's your candles across this range. And I think specifically more so in commercial, I think it's very easy to require that. Teton County goes as far as saying you can only have a certain number of rooms per development.
Total,
square footage
exterior.
total, and you are limited to that regardless if they're downlit or what they are, and they still have to be downlit. It's, I think, on the excessive side.
It's way excessive. It's very hard to keep it under that
Yes,
cap.
super excessive.
And Monica, I think your subdivision, your HOA has confronted this in the past year or two. Because they've had builders that installed like these permanent exterior lights on a house or two.
Mhm.
Like, I think to where the homeowner couldn't even turn them off, like they were on like a timer,
Huh?
you know, a daylight timer.
Interesting. I don't know specifically.
And then there's the other ones with like the mega light in their driveway shining across the street.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that I do feel like you can impact someone's quality of life. More so than like, you don't like the color of my house, look the other way. However, if I'm trying to sleep and there's a light blaring through my window, that's gonna.
Or driving by. I mean, it's a safety issue for drivers if you can't see pedestrians at night.
So maybe something we handle outside of PUD that just needs to be adopted. I mean, because the PUD, if you adopt a PUD and you still have commercial use, my assumption is you're still held to the commercial zoning requirements that, and if that contains, like, your light is defined as this, that is what we need to do. So I think residential is a little harder, but commercial a little more defined is reasonable. I mean, Ridley's lights, current lights, you can almost see from the airport.
Yeah, but you can sure see the parking lot.
You can see it from a.
No, I agree. I think
Gosh.
we need to do something with, you know, especially like the downward facing. I think there's enough science behind why those are more desirable. So,
Yeah, and then decide how the ball fields might fit into those regulations.
So the ball fields are probably some of the most well-designed lights in town, the current ball fields, not the old ball field lights.
Yeah.
And actually, I have candles of how far they bleed over I have all that information from our design because we were very purposeful on like trying to be careful with that and not be a beacon when those things are on.
like when they were up on the hill and
Yeah.
it would blind you from just looking up the hill.
Yeah, they are way, way, way better on that front. So.
Well, any other last minute PUD items? We know, I guess we have our names listed under these categories here. So is it reasonable to, I don't know, get this working draft by a week from today? Too much?
Well, what are you looking for? Because I think, you know, I've gone in and I've put the stuff in that I thought made sense. I think maybe the next step is for all of us to read through it and make comments.
I think we have quite a bit more to add on my section.
Yeah, our
Maybe
section.
we should have a deadline to complete our sections and then have time to read through it, like another deadline.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if we can get all of our sections done by next Monday,
Okay.
and then read through it, make your comments. Maybe on Monday, I'll copy it and make a new document and we can start with the comments and everything.
You want people to track changes or just make changes inside of the document?
I think while you're doing your own changes, it doesn't need to be tracked, but then maybe that new document
Just
should.
probably
Where-
just comments.
Yeah, just let us make comments rather than changes.
Can you do track changes in Google Docs? Or should we do a Word document?
I
guess
think
I'm-
Google Docs automatically creates an audit trail of all changes. Like you could go back in time and see all prior versions of this document.
Would a
It-
different format work better for staff though, since they're not on Google?
As long as you share the Google, I can get into it.
Okay,
I think we should just use the add comment function,
Okay,
so that we can talk through each of the changes. Because
I
one
like
sec,
that too, because then you would know who made that comment.
yes, because looking through the audit trail is pretty time consuming.
Mhm.
And some of us might leave it till the last minute. And we might all be doing it at midnight. Yeah.
okay, so is it better if we make a new document and everyone can copy their sections into it?
Why do we need a new document, I guess would be the question.
This one is going to have a little more of the rough draft to it. I don't know. Maybe not.
But we're gonna change it as we go. We're not, I mean,
You want to just keep it?
I don't see the benefit of having a different document.
Yeah,
Because I'm assuming that whatever everybody's added in there is what they would move over to the new one anyway.
I have a lot of garbage in my section, like a lot of.
Maybe by next Monday,
editing.
that could be part of your
we gotta clean it up.
cleanup, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So like maybe make the goal for by next Monday to have all of your information in there and then to clean it up in the kind of a rough draft form, ready for people to read and comment on.
Yeah, we can do that. And then for the structure of it, are we presenting this as a letter to the town or to the council, or are we presenting it as ready to be amended into the code? So is it going to be presented with 475-299A1? Are we formatting it, structuring it like that, or are we formatting it as a letter that?
Well, at some point, it's gonna have to get formatted, but I don't know that we're there yet.
I would say you guys get that clean and leave it in the formatting it is. Let Chelsea and I format it to the ordinance portion and like the code requirements. What I'll probably do is just get it closed, and quite honestly, we'll probably use AI to help us fix the formatting a little bit, because we can upload an example and we can just fix it all at once and save it. Because once it's in that format, it's not going to be as editable or functional, I don't think, is like when you start talking section, I mean, we'll talk to Ed and see what section it will be, 475 dash whatever, and then we'll just make it match where it needs to be. And that's something that's
Well, and until we,
appropriate for us to do, so.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there. And until we, figure out exactly what we want in here, we may want extra sections, or we may want to wipe out a section, and it doesn't make sense to go through and number everything until we know what we've got.
Yeah, but for the bulk of it, though, maybe we move some of the paragraphs up or down.
Yeah, totally.
Would you mind handling that?
Sure. Yeah,
After Monday?
Yeah, what is your vision for what that's gonna look like as far as moving sections up and down? What are you hoping to see?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I don't know. Just, I guess somewhat is going to be structured like the other zone. Categories.
So,
So purpose, a purpose paragraph, like, I don't know what.
yeah, I'll look and see what I can make sense of. The problem is gonna be though, if you want me to go in and make those changes, but people are trying to read through and make comments, if you're in there at the same time, it can cause some.
that seems like maybe next step, potentially.
Yeah, well, I'd like to get it organized before we all read through it, so.
Before we even write it.
Okay,
Yeah, so-
why don't you have everybody have your stuff done by Monday, and then give me maybe until the next Monday, because I've got, it's swim season, so I'm out of town, and I'm starting 2 master's degree classes on Monday. But I can get it done by the 19th.
Okay,
So, and then on the 19th, which is a holiday, that everybody could start with their comments on that day, and go through the end of the month, and then we could go over it again at our next meeting. And that would eliminate needing a workshop.
perfect. That sounds great.
Would you send an email to Judy, like when, just by the 19th, is there a
Yep.
reminder?
You got all that, Chelsea? Minutes for next month.
Minutes, you're gonna say discuss PUDs.
Yeah,
Priorities. It's gonna be about 3 sentences.
Alterations, revisiting in 2 weeks.
Okay, all right.
Oh, when you're on a Zoom meeting, it'll record for you and then it summarizes and it's a fairly decent summary. And that could transfer into.
Translation.
I have the translation on today. However, it doesn't recognize people's voices. So it's like,
Well, and that's where the Zoom thing is handy because you're already logged in as your name.
Is it?
Like, what is it called? Otter, I think is what I've seen used more than anything, where it will be, your Otter AI joins the meeting as a separate, and it'll say like, Becky's AI is, recording the meeting or whatever. You click that you're being recorded and everything. But then it'll send you a meeting summary at the end, and it's got Judy said this, and Monica said this, and Chelsea asked this question, and, so it's very thorough.
That's great.
It's great for anybody who misses the meeting can really see what happened in the meeting,
Yeah,
all the discussion and everything.
or if you don't want to take meeting notes yourself, like actively, you're trying to just speak,
Yeah.
you need the notes taken,
Well, and potentially, I'm sure there's probably some other solution out there that Blue Blade would probably be able to offer you suggestions for this, but, barring that, everybody could log in on the online meeting, and then maybe it could keep track of who said what. You just have to silence everything.
Okay,
We're into that.
any other comments or schedule of the next meeting? Public hearing.
likely a public hearing.
For who?
Standard plan. CUP and special development.
So is that going to be a longer one? Because if it is, maybe we should schedule a workshop for
I don't
this.
think it's overly complicated. The special development plan is because they intend to have retail space, storage space, and residential space all on the same lot. The CUP is for mixed use residential, commercial, and there is a parking waiver request within all of that, because they don't have on-site parking to facilitate it all. So they have a there's actually a parking waiver request to find. Ordinance, been speaking with that. This is how they intend to use right-of-way parking.
So I guess the question is do you expect that to take a long time?
If you guys spend more than 45 minutes, I'll be disappointed.
Disappointed. Okay, so maybe
I don't know. I feel like there's about 3 or 4 questions that have to be answered. And then beyond that, I think the answer is yes or no. I don't think there's a ton of gray area.
I guess my thought is if we're really going to dive into the PUD discussion, are we going to have time at that meeting without having to be here till 8:00? Or should we schedule a workshop?
Well, if we can get it organized and read through, it won't take us very long to make a recommendation to the town
That's true.
at that point.
We get all our work done.
We'll get it.
It's
Get it pretty well.
optimistic. I've done these. We'll see. I mean, it's great. I hope we can, but
You don't have to solve it all by next meeting.
That's true.
Come back for public hearing, which you will have more time.
that's true.
Dave, do we disappoint you often?
Yes. I was expecting that to be tops an hour.
Yeah,
2 and 2.
and then Ryan.
I warned you this morning,
Yeah, I did appreciate that heads up, but I didn't get to read through the whole document, but I double checked mine.
Sorry, you're a little close to home. Did you disappoint me tonight? Yes. Often, maybe that's an overstatement.
It's okay.
But the best part is, it's not my responsibility anymore.
Maybe just handed you.
Change.
I'll rule with an iron fist.
Okay, so we schedule the next meeting?
Not yet.
February 2nd is the first Monday of February. And I would recommend 5:00 PM.
Okay. So moved. And we're adjourned. How's that?
That's speedy.
Well done.
Cool.
Minutes.
Thank you, thank you. You're the bomb, Chelsea.
Michael, are you good?
That was a nod.
He did not, I didn't see him.
Yeah, sorry, it was just marking that on my calendar. But yes, I'm good. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and end the meeting here and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming. That's CPM.
The good news